Dear students, today we will discuss about the poverty, its concept and the various data with regard to the poverty. So, poverty is the curse on humanity. This is the beautiful sentence written in your book. Yes, really, poverty is the curse on humanity. Poor people may starve, or poverty leads to suicides. So poverty is not so acceptable one. Poverty is a disgrace on humanity. So there are two concepts with regard to poverty. Number one is absolute poverty. Number two is relative poverty. Absolute poverty means when a person does not have any sufficient food to eat and essential items to live on, then he will be said to have suffering from absolute poverty. Sometimes starvation may be there, and starvation, not having sufficient essential goods and food to live in, is known as absolute poverty. He will not have the food, cloth and shelter, you can say. The three essential items, food, cloth and shelter, is not available for them. Then those persons are known as living under absolute poverty. Next, second one is relative poverty. Here comparison is done. Even if they are not poor, absolute poor, they have sufficient amount of things, money, even they may be rich, but comparatively they are not so rich. I have money to live in and spend my life comfortably, but I am not so rich as Ambani. You are not so rich as me. So a comparison is there. At that time, a person who has less amount of things, money, food, cloth and shelter, and the things which you need to lead a comfortable life, when you are compared with some other person, a country is compared with some other country, then it is known as relatively poor. You are relatively poor to me when compared to me. I am relatively poor when compared to Ambani, Adani. India is comparatively poor when compared to USA. Like that. So a comparison is there. That is known as relative poverty. Next, poverty line is another concept. What is poverty line? Poverty line refers to the cut-off level of annual income of a household. This is not the income of a person, but this is here the income level of a household is taken. A cut-off level is fixed. If the income of a household is below that level, then they are known as having below poverty line income, or they are known to be poor and under BPL, below poverty line. And poverty line is based on three factors. One is minimum subsistence levels of consumption. The person or the household must not have sufficient minimum level of consumption income. Minimum level of consumption to live, subsistence to live. If a household is not having even the minimum standards of consumption level to maintain themselves, then they would be counted as under BPL, below poverty line. Next, second one is the estimated cost of minimum nutritional diet. Here, nutritional diet has been taken into consideration, not amount. Nutritional value that a person is taking. He may be eating but without having any nutrition in it. What is the use of it? So, if minimum level of nutritional value is not there, then that nutrition value must be converted into price, money. So, here cost of minimum nutritional value must be estimated, and that is below the fixed margin from time to time by the government of India. Then they are known to be BPL, under BPL, below poverty line family. Next, last one is per capita monthly consumption expenditure. If the per capita monthly consumption expenditure of a household, of a person, is less than the fixed margin, then that family, that household is known to be under BPL, below poverty line. So these are the factors, three factors which are taken while fixing the poverty line. And if the households or any persons are having less than that income, then they are known to be below poverty line people, household. Or if they have crossed the limit of that poverty line, then they are known to be above poverty line people or household. Several studies have been done. Among them, one is Gaurav Datta's study based on NSS, National Sample Survey data. This study was conducted for the period 1951 to 1992, and it was taken into consideration the data submitted by NSS in 1994, and as per the 1994 calculation, if a person is not taking the nutritional value up to or nutritional value of 2400 calories in rural areas, and if a person is not taking 2100 caloric value in urban areas daily, then he will be known as a poor person. If a person is not availing or not in a position to take 2400 calories of food a day in rural areas and 2100 calories of food in a day in urban areas, then he will be considered as a poor person. And the data given by him in 1994 was 36.7% of the people are poor, below poverty line in rural areas, and 30.5% are below poverty line, BPL line, in urban areas in 1994. This was the study conducted by the Guru Datta. Another committee estimated a new BPL for the year 2004 and 5. And as per this committee has fixed the amount for a household in a month. If a household in rural areas has the monthly income of 446.8 per month, then he is known to be a person. Tendulkar committee estimated a new BPL for the year 2004 and 5, and this committee estimated the monthly income of a person. That should be the minimum level to be considered for BPL. If a person in rural areas and he earns 446.8 per month in rural areas, then he will be under poverty line. If he crosses this limit of 446.8 rupees per month, then he will not be considered as a poor person. He will be above poor. Next, in urban areas, the income of a person to be called under BPL, below poverty line, or a poor person is, the limit is 578 rupees 80 paise per month. This seems to be redundant, but this is the data given by the Tendulkar committee. And the Planning Commission has also given its own definition. It gave the definition, Planning Commission gave the definition based on 68th report of NSS. Report of 2009 and 10 of NSS. And this report says that per capita per day of a person must be 27 rupees 20 paise in rural areas and 33 rupees 33 paise in urban areas to be called as a person who is above poverty. If he is not having this much of income per day, then that person will be called as a poor person and a person who is under BPL, under below poverty line. Hello students, now we will analyze the estimates of poverty. These are the estimates related to different time period. During the year 1993-94, the poverty ratio in rural areas was 50.1. The poverty ratio in urban areas was 31.8%. Next, total poverty ratio was 45.3. This was high. And this was during the period 1993-94. And during the period 2004 and 5, the poverty ratio was 41.8% in rural areas, 25.7% in urban areas, and the total poverty ratio was 37.2 in total. Next, in 2009-10, the poverty ratio in rural areas was 33.8%. In urban areas, it was 20.9%. In total poverty ratio was 29.8. Next, in 2011 and 12, the poverty ratio in rural areas was 25.7. In urban areas, it was 13.7, and the total poverty ratio was 21.9. So, if you go through the data, we can say easily that from 1993 to 2011, the total poverty ratio decreased from 45.3 to 21.9. And the number of poor people in millions have also been shown for the same period. In 1993-94, the poor persons in rural areas were 328.6, and in urban areas, the number of poor persons were 74.5 millions, and total in all India level, the total number of poor persons were 403.1 millions, and they were slightly increased. Even with the increase in population, there was a slight increase only. In 2004 and 5, the number of poor persons in rural areas were 326.3, in urban areas 80.8, and in total all India level, the poor persons were 403.1 millions. And in 2009 and 10, the number of poor persons in millions were 278.2, in urban areas 76.5 millions, and total number of poor persons in India were 354.7 millions. And in 2011 and 12, the number of poor persons in rural areas were 216.7 millions, in urban areas 53.1 millions, and total number of poor persons in India were 269.8. If you go through the data, you can better understand that the number of poor persons decreased from 403.1 million in 1993 to 269. The number of poor persons decreased from 403 in 1993 to 269.8 millions. So there was a great achievement. Next, poverty gap index. Poverty gap index is defined by the mean distance below the poverty line in a proportion of that line, and it shows the depth of poverty and its incidence. So this is new concept, and it shows the gap. It shows the depth of poverty and its incidence. But the thing is that it is not sensitive to economic inequalities. The poverty gap thus measures the transfer that could bring the income of every person exactly up to poverty line, thereby eliminating the poverty. It will show the distance from the poverty line, and it will not suggest any eliminating methods. You have to have it. Hello dear friends. Now we are going to discuss about the causes of poverty. What are the causes of poverty? We will study them one by one. The foremost cause is underdevelopment. In developing countries, particularly, underdevelopment is one of the major causes, and it can be further divided into two: underdevelopment in agriculture sector and underdevelopment in industrial sector. In agriculture sector, the causes are five. Major causes are five in this section. Number one is uneconomical farms or unprofitable farms. The fragmentation of land due to law of inheritance and poverty leads to small land holdings. Small land holdings are unprofitable. Modern methods of technology and modern methods of production can't be used in these small fragments of land. So the crop yield is not profitable. So uneconomic land holdings leads to poverty. There will be more cost of production than the profits. Next, lack of credit facilities. Poor farmers, small farmers, marginal farmers will not have the access to financial institutions like banks and other financial institutions which give them the loans and advances for crops. So due to lack of institutional facilities, credit facilities, they can't sow the seeds and get the yield properly in time. And due to that, they will become poor. Next, small land holdings. As I told you, fragmentation of land. The law of inheritance, which is there in India, divides the land into subsections in small parts. All the sons and daughters divide the land of their parents, into small pieces as per their share. As the share is guaranteed as per the law of inheritance in India, particularly, the land is divided into small pieces which can't be used for any productive purposes, and major crops can't be used. Profitable commercial crops can't be produced in those small pieces of land. So these lands are uneconomical. Why these lands are fragmented? This may be due to poverty, due to ill health. The farmers will sell the land. For the marriages of the children, the farmers will sell the land. Part of the land, share of the land will be sold out. And for educational purposes, the land will be sold out in fragments, in small pieces. And above all, the law of inheritance will make them into fragments. So small land holdings are not profitable, and major crops, commercial crops can't be produced there in the small pieces of lands. Next, lack of inputs. Lack of inputs means all those things, implements are not at once, and we can't use, the farmers can't use the advanced methods, machineries in the small land holdings. Tractors, huskers and many other implements, inputs, best fertilizers, suitable fertilizers, pesticides can't be used in the small pieces of land by the poor farmers, because small land holdings will be held by the marginal farmers only. When the marginal farmers are there in majority, then they can't use the proper methods of technology, methods of technological production, automation of agriculture can't be done. Because of that, there will be less profits and the farmers will become poor. The inputs will be of poor quality. Agricultural machineries can't be used in these small pieces of land. So they will become poor. Next, insecurity of tenure. If some farmers do not have land, they are agricultural laborers and they want to have the land and tenure and rent, then there is insecurity. The owner of the land will not guarantee them to continue over his land for a longer period. So what will he do? He will give the land, the owner of the land will give his land for rent for some period only. Afterwards, he will be removed. Because of the insecurity of tenure, they can't undertake the developmental activities on the land, on the rented land. So agriculture produce will be less and profits will be less. This way poverty will be there among the people who live on agricultural sector. Next, in industrial sector, the reasons for poverty are capital intensive. Industrial sector has become capital intensive after new economic policy. Instead of engaging labor, manual labor, capitalists or industries are engaging machinery in the industries, using machinery in their production. So, due to capital intensive production methods, unemployment is being created. When unemployment is created and no job opportunities are created for the growing population, then what will happen? Naturally, poverty will be there evidently all along, everywhere. Next, in high capital output ratio. If you see, in industrial sector, there will be high capital output ratio. So this leads to poverty, unemployment and poverty. Next, low labor capital ratio. Lower labor capital ratio will be low. As I told you, people will not be engaged, laborers will not be engaged. Instead, in the place of the laborers, manual work, machineries will be engaged in the process of production. When machinery is produced, people will become unemployed. And when there is unemployment among the people, along with the growing population, then poverty will be widespread. Next, unskilled labor force. In India, the labor force is unskilled when compared to other countries. Generally, in all the developing countries, labor will be unskilled. They are not so skilled as the laborers of developed countries. In India also, the unskilled laborers are in majority. When unskilled laborers are there, they can't be paid huge amounts as wages. They will earn less as wages and they will become poor this way. Next, another reason for poverty is unemployment and low wages. Unemployment and low wages can be explained technically by saying that supply of labor is more than demand for labor. When supply of labor is more, when population is more, then the supply of labor will be more. When supply of labor is more, that means that demand for labor is less. When demand for labor is less and supply is more, wages will be less. Low wages will be there. And when there are low wages, poverty will erupt. So, another reason. Next, low capital in industrial sector leads to non-absorption of labor. Low capital in industrial sector. If capital is low, investment is low in the industrial sector, then the absorption of labor force in the process production will be low. This way, people will not get jobs and job opportunities. Hence, they will remain poor. Next, third cause of poverty is population explosion. This is a special case of India. Population increase in India. Population increased from 361.09 million in 1951 to 1210.9 millions in 2011. It increased 3.5 times during the 60 years period from 1951 to 2011. Within 60 years, the population of India increased by 3.5 times. You can imagine now. 350% you can say. So when population is increasing in this way steadily, that is known as population explosion. Population explosion will not give any chance to create the jobs in such a manner, with such a flexibility. Creation of jobs will be in lesser speed, lesser quantity than the increase in population. So this leads to poverty. The fourth point is inequalities in assets and income distribution. The assets and the income distribution among the poor and rich is unequal, or you can say the distribution, the gap between the rich and the poor, so far as distribution of assets and income is wider. There are Ambanis, a few, in whose hands the wealth of the nation is accumulated, whereas there are crores of people who are on the verge of poverty. So there are inequalities so far as distribution of assets and distribution is concerned. It is among the poor people and the rich people. You can better understand that the poor agricultural laborers are there without land. Even they do not have land to survive. They do work in agricultural land as laborers and survive. During the unseason, in summer times and in other times when there is no farming, they will suffer a lot. They will become unemployed. Seasonal unemployment will be there among them and they will suffer a lot. Poverty will be widespread among them. And it has been surveyed that majority of the people are marginal farmers. who have less than 1 hectare of land. Those people who have less than 1 hectare of land are known as marginal farmers. And marginal farmers are more in number, in percentages in India than the big farmers, who are less in number but holds many hectares of land, large area of geographical land for cultivation. Next, so far as ownership of industrial and commercial capital is concerned, it is very low in urban areas. In India, the commercial and industrial capital, the capital to establish industries and to do business, is also low in India. Of course, there are many, a few Adanis and Ambanis are there, but they are not more in number. Majority of the people who do business and who have industries are not having sufficient amount for investment in industries and in capital form in the business enterprises. So due to this, in urban areas poverty is there, can be seen. Next point is, next cause of poverty is inflation. This is one of the important causes in India and developing countries, in India particularly. When the price rise, what will happen? The purchasing power of the people will decrease. If the prices rise, the purchasing power of the people will decrease automatically. Because as the price rises, you can buy less. You can buy less means you have got lesser purchasing power due to the increase in prices. You can't purchase more due to rise in prices. And when your purchasing power decreases, that means that you have become poor. The real per capita income has gone down. And the inflation affects the living standards of the poor and middle class particularly. When you do not have the purchasing power and your purchasing power has suffered a lot, affected a lot, it has decreased, then you can't purchase more, you will purchase less. When you purchase less, it means that your standards of living standards have gone down. And this is particularly seen with the poor people and the middle class people. Next cause of poverty is failure of 5-year plans. India adopted 5-year plans. And in each and every plan, we had some targets for special sectors to improve and develop. Unfortunately, the targets fixed by the 5-year plans, fixed in the 5-year plans, were not achieved, and the development rate, the growth rate in the first 5-year plans were less than 5%. The targets could not be reached. Of course, reasons are many. One of the reasons is we do not have any resources. We had been emptied by the British rule. There was no capital investment in the industries, and apart from that, banking system, insurance system was not good, transport and communication was not sufficient, education was not up to the mark, skilled labor was not there, technical education was not there. India had to develop in all the fields, in all these fields. So India had required more amount of investment, capital, that India did not have. So what happened? India could not achieve the target fixed. Of course, aspirations were more, high aspirations were there. Targets were high, but we could not achieve the targets in the 5-year plans because capital was not there. in every sector, in every field, there needs to be developed. We had required the huge amount of investment. So foreign aid, foreign investment was being called for, but it was up to a certain limit, up to 3 to 4% only foreign aid was there. So the failure of 5-year plans were one of the major causes. 5-year plans was made. The aim of the 5-year plan was to develop the country as well as to develop the standard of living of the people living in India. The main motto was to raise the standard of living of the people. That can be achieved only when development is taken place in all the sectors of the economy. That could not be achieved because capital was low, it was not available in sufficient quantity, and population was also increasing rapidly. Next, seventh cause of population is social factors. Unfortunately, we means Indians. Indians do not have the sufficient initiative. India lack initiative and dynamism as well as resourcefulness. Indians have less initiative. They are less dynamic. They lack dynamism and initiative when compared to other countries. They want to be satisfied with what they have. They are self-contented than persons who have more aspirations, more courage to fight and get the profits. This is the nature of Indians generally. And they are more dogmatic and fatalist attitude. There is more dogmatic principle, outdated. Instead of getting the things done, doing the things by themselves, fighting out the poverty, creating the jobs for themselves, establishing enterprises. Instead of doing all these things, they are satisfied with what God has given to them. So it is seen that Indians are more dogmatic and they have fatalistic attitude. They are satisfied with what they have. They throw everything to over God and remain cool. This leads to poverty. Next, social institutions and Indians' attitude hampers development. Social institutions like caste system, joint family system, and laws of inheritance are there which hamper the development and growth of the nation as well as the people. For example, caste system is prevalent there in India. It is more dangerous than poison, in my opinion. Even educated people are supporting their own caste people. And the cause of the nation is thrown back when caste is brought forward. Joint family system has become outdated, reforms have been made, but still laws of inheritance are there which are making the poor people more poorer. When a bit of land of the father is further divided among the sons and the daughters, small pieces of land will remain, and in those uneconomically small pieces of land holdings, good crops can't be produced. So this leads to uneconomic, unprofitable land holdings, which leads to poverty. Ninth cause of poverty is political factors. Historically speaking, there was British regime before independence, and they were exploiting the resources of India, and they were not for the development of the citizens or the population of India. So there was exploitation before 1947, before independence, due to British rule. After independence, politicians developed at the cost of the country, which means that the Nawabs, the Rajas which were there and who were abolished with their titles, their kingdoms were snatched away, and those Nawabs and Rajas came forward in new form, in the form of politicians, in the form of economic imperialists. They manage the affairs of the political system. They dictate terms in economic field, in the economy. So politicians developed at the cost of the country. They were not having much interest in developing the country when compared to develop themselves. So there was corrupt administrative system. It is still there. There is corrupt administrative system. No one is interested to develop and keep the country clean. In corruption index, our India is at the top few. And inefficient administrative system is there in India because of corruption. If corruption is there, inefficient administrative system is there, politicians are not clean, the persons who are making the laws are not obeying the laws, lawmakers have become lawbreakers, and the lawmakers, the politicians do not have any soft corner towards the poor and middle class, then automatically poverty will erupt. Last factor in your chapter is institutional factors which leads to poverty. Institutional factors, you can, just as I told you, semi-feudalism. There was feudalism, land acts were there, Nawabs were there, Jagirdars were there. After independence, all those Jagirdars, Nawabs have been abolished. But yes, semi-feudalism was still there and is still there. Semi-feudalism in the forms of politicians, semi-feudalists in the form of politicians, village heads, have led to rural poverty. They still want to get honor from the people, even though they snatch away, they resort to malpractices, they swallow away the money of the government and do not let the benefits of the schemes of government reach the people, poor people. Even then, they want to have honor. They have spoiled the rural poverty, they have spoiled the rural economy. Rural poverty has imposed on the poor rural people. And second aspect is rural social and political institutions have not allowed damn and technical reforms, just as I told you. These people, semi-feudalists, feudals in the form of politicians, not let the rural social and political institutions develop technically as well as agriculture. No reforms were allowed to reach the poor people in rural areas as well as urban areas. Institutional rigidities have not allowed equitable sharing of public goods. In education and health sector, these big people do not allow the rural poor people to have equitable sharing in public system, public schemes, government schemes in education, health and social sector. So this kept the poor people poor persistently.